Venezuelans hate to be poor. Why that happens? Well, today we are gonna try to figure out why.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, VenezuelaInsider.com.
One of the things that I mentioned here repeatedly on this platform is that one of the most important things about Venezuelan society is status. Why this happens? Something cool about Venezuelan society is that pretty much racism, xenophobia, and that kind of thing pretty much virtually it does not exist. So if you come here, regardless of your skin color, nationality, religion, whatever might be the case, you have a shot for everything. So you're not gonna suffer discrimination. However, the only thing that the Venezuelans discriminate is socioeconomic status. And Venezuelans are very, I'm gonna say very childish about this particular mindset, because Venezuelans discriminate not on what you do, but on what do you have. I mentioned this a bunch of times. So if you're someone that values, skills and knowledge and that kind of thing, Venezuela is not like that. People are, I'm talking on the most people. If you're on an individual level, it's another thing. If you are, let's say, a good amateur, semi-professional athlete, that's another thing. Or if you read a lot, if you're very knowledgeable and you're very smart and very intelligent, you have niches for that, by the way, so you're going to be cool. But on the grand scheme of things, Venezuelans don't value what you do, your skills is the only value, or the thing that value the most is what do you have. In case of the men, the financial status, regardless on how you got it, and the case of women is female beauty. It is what it is. Now, if you're broke, and if you're, let's say, not pretty female, still they're going to treat you well, they're going to be polite to you, you're going to make a bunch of friends. However, this is something, underneath going on, just giving the heads up. Now, why this happens? Well, Venezuela has been since the past decades, but has increased a lot since the economic recovery after the 80% GDP collapse. The inequality in the country has increased a lot in the past 7 to 8 years. Venezuela has been unequal most of the time, but the inequality right now, the income inequality and wealth inequality right now is very, very, it's very extreme. On the best case scenario, Venezuela is a top 10 country regarding Gini coefficient. That's the macroeconomic way in order to measure inequality on any given country. On the worst case scenario, Venezuela is the second most unequal nation in the world, just behind South Africa. The country that is popular for apartheid. Well, Venezuela is just below that. And why this happens? Happens, of course, the access, one of the worst things about being an average Venezuelan is that you have less opportunities for synergy in order to increase your standards of living. They're still there, but they are not plentiful. And you have to work very, very hard in order to have access to the few opportunities in order to increase your standards of living. So one of the reasons that, we already discussed this yet again, and I'm going to do it yet again here on the platform, is that most of the wealthy people here in Venezuela are the people close to the government, the rich kids that inherit businesses from their parents and grandparents, when making money in Venezuela was way easy, like the 70s, the 80s, to a lesser degree the 2000s, and also the Venezuelan Joe Pesci, I already mentioned this. Sneaky, cunning bastards that doesn't have any particular moral, and do a few shady businesses every now and then, and they have some sort of cash. I met a bunch of those guys, and they're unpleasant to deal with. Anyways, and you have, of course, just a handful of entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs and investors that work very hard, and actually they are financially successful here in Venezuela. So Venezuela is like New York. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Funny thing though. But anyways, and also you have people that for Venezuelan standards make good money, usually white-collar professionals like doctors and lawyers and that kind of people. They are freelancers and make a couple of $1,000s per month. And for Venezuelan standards, that is very, very good. And also you have a handful of small business owners. That something funny about Venezuela, that actually if you're a small business owner, I don't know, if you're successful in that, you get good profit margins, and you can have a very good standard of living for Venezuelan standards. It's funny how it works. So many people here in Venezuela, most people actually are striving towards that particular status, financial status. First, because of course the financial itself, but also for the social appreciation that you get when you are able to achieve that particular outcome. Now, funny thing is, since the dollarization process, the de facto dollarization process that we are having here in the country since 2019, actually many blue-collar workers, very humble workers, are actually making decent money here in the country. I mean, for Venezuelan standards, have to be fair. For instance, housekeepers, they can charge between, let's say, $10, $15 to $50 per day, and they do it if they do it consistently, they can make something close to $600 per month. That for Venezuela and for a housekeeper is actually a good salary. People like mechanics, they are making actually quite some money. The good ones, like everything in life, they charge heavily in dollars for their services, for Venezuelan standards, of course. And they're making something around $700, $800 per month. The good ones, of course. Construction workers, people in construction, yeah, I'm a big fan of mafia movies, by the way. So people in construction actually can make something around close to $1,000 per month if they're good at it. And of course, this is something also is not a fixed amount. The Venezuelan economy comes and goes. I'm talking on the street level. So it's difficult. The consistency is difficult, but you have that opportunity. And also resellers, people like that. And they are working very hard to make that money. Now, the funny thing about the Venezuelan society, and I'm having this random example. I was discussing to a friend that this particular friend is a white collar professional, and so he has a good profile. But he was on a, let's say, less developed neighborhood the other day, and he was telling me that they are selling this fried pork thing on the street that is expensive for Venezuelan standards, costs $5. I mean, but it's a street food cheap thing, but it costs $5. And what he was telling me, this is very funny, he was on this lower class neighborhood, and he was over there, and he had a few clients, and a few people were, happy eating this pork. It's like the skin of the pork. I don't remember the name. Its name in Spanish is chicharrón. Okay, and they were, eating it like they're eating, on a fancy Michelin star, something like that. And our conclusion, and they were showing off, hey, I'm eating this fried pork thing. And it was a funny thing. And the conclusion was that on that particular level, that gives them status, because I can afford the fried pork and you don't. I mean, it's a funny thing though. Also, what happens here in Venezuela, people here are spenders. Venezuelans are not frugal at all. Venezuelans don't believe in austerity. That's one of the reasons why they they hate this particular crisis that we had in Venezuela in the past decade. And actually the main reason why so much of them migrated in the first place, because they thought, and in some cases mistakenly, that they can increase their standards of living in other countries like the US or even in places like Peru for some reason. And hence, since they will increase their standards of living, they will increase their purchasing power, their discretionary spending possibilities, and hence that get that particular life that they cherish for, regarding, spending a lot. Now, Venezuelans spend very particularly. It's not like they want, big Birkin bags and Rolexes and Lamborghinis kind of thing. I mean, it's not, no. There are Venezuelans, the very rich Venezuelans, but afterwards, most Venezuelans, they want to spend, on typical leisure activities like, barbecues and beer and concerts and basically activities where they can splurge with their relatives, because Venezuelans are very social. So they like to, mingle a lot, 30, 40 people with a lot of family and friends and that kind of thing, and do barbecues and soups. For some reason, that's a thing here in the country. And put music and spend the whole day having beer and that kind of thing. And it's a cool deal, by the way. I've done it a bunch of times, and it's a good thing, because it's It's not a, ostentatious activity. It's not something like a posh activity. It's just for mingling with your friends and family, and that, of course, costs money. And Venezuelans like to spend a lot also on their children and give the best standard of living for their children, private schools, also extracurricular activities, swimming, flamenco dancing for the girls, and ballet, and swimming lessons, and, sports, soccer, and music, and that kind of thing for their children. And I think it's a great thing. Even very poor people go beyond their means in order to pay private schools for their children. Venezuelans are very aspirational. They work very hard in order to get the best standard of living possible on their own way. I mean, it's not like, yet again, the Birkin bags or the avocado toast that you have in the US with the millennials. By the way, an avocado is very cheap here in Venezuela, and we don't do it on toast. That's a weird thing here in the country. You can do it at home, something like that. But anyways, I've seen a couple of places that they sell avocado toast right now because the gringos love it. Very cool. The main point is that Venezuelans like that particular wealth, but it's not just about physical goods. It's just about the communion of the families and kind of thing. And they like to spend a lot in order to maintain that communion because that everything, there is no such thing as a free lunch. And Venezuelans know that. So Venezuelans hate to be poor because they associate being poor with lack of binding, community, and relationships amongst their peers, their families, and their friends, because they cannot create that particular communion, with the barbecues and the beer, and also with the kids and doing, big lavishing kids' birthday parties, things like that. And Venezuelans associate having money with having that communion. And even in slums and poor neighborhoods, people do, this big spending on beers and in the feast with soups and barbecues and that, even in holidays. Actually, in holidays it's bigger because we make a bunch of holiday meals like hallacas and pork and that kind of thing that we love here on holidays. Holidays in Venezuela were actually very cool until the crisis and also the migration, sadly. So that's the main reason. First, the communion about friends and family. So if you need money in order to pay for that, the physical things for the communion. Also the development of their children, and also lack of opportunities. Because in Venezuela, the more status that you have, the more scenery opportunities that you are have. So at the end, Venezuelans hate, and I underline hate, being poor because that hinders more communion with their people, and also lack of opportunities overall regarding business, work, and that kind of thing.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.